Ambassador Trell's feathers ruffled involuntarily as he studied the star chart displayed before him. The delicate Orion had spent 30 years in diplomatic service, meeting species of every shape and size across the Coalition's 14-member worlds. None of that experience prepared him for this moment. "They're late," Security Chief Davin muttered, his reptilian tongue flicking out to taste the recycled air of the diplomatic vessel Harmony's voice. The large security officer had never trusted newcomers, and these humans worried him more than most. Junior Analyst Kree's compound eyes reflected the soft blue light of her data screens. The insectoid's antennae twitched as she processed information. "Ambassador, I'm detecting something on long-range sensors. Distance, 200,000 kilometers and closing." Captain Nissa turned from her position near the main viewport. The experienced commander had overseen 47 first contact scenarios in her career. Her voice carried the calm of someone who had seen everything. "Display it on the main screen." The viewport shifted to show the approaching vessel. At first, it appeared as merely a bright speck against the darkness of space. Trell leaned forward, his small frame tense with anticipation. The Coalition had agreed to evaluate human military capabilities as part of their application to join the trading network. Standard procedure called for the applicant species to present a patrol craft or perhaps a small corvette for inspection. "Kree, what are the mass readings?" Nissa asked. The analyst's mandibles clicked nervously. "Captain, the readings must be incorrect. According to my instruments, that vessel masses approximately 8 million tons." Silence filled the bridge. Davin's scales rippled with confusion. "That's impossible. Run the scan again." Kree's fingers danced across her console. "Confirmed, Captain. 8.2 million tons, and it's still accelerating toward us." Trell felt his breathing quicken. His species had evolved on a low-gravity world with abundant oxygen. They were fragile by galactic standards, built for negotiation rather than confrontation. The thought of something that massive approaching their position made his heart beat faster. "How large is it?" he asked, though part of him didn't want to know the answer. "Visual range in 30 seconds, Kree reported. "I'm enhancing the image now." The speck on the viewport began to grow. What emerged from the darkness made everyone on the bridge freeze in place. The human vessel stretched across their field of view like a small city floating through space. Its hull bore the scars of combat, patches of newer metal standing out against weathered armor plating. Weapon emplacements bristled from every surface, their barrels pointing in all directions like the quills of some massive predator. 3 kilometers long, Kree whispered. "Power output exceeds most of our orbital stations. I'm reading multiple reactor cores, redundant systems throughout. This isn't a patrol ship." Trell's slim fingers gripped the armrest of his chair. "What have we invited into Coalition space?" The communications panel chimed with an incoming transmission. Nissa gestured for it to be opened. A human face appeared on the screen, female, with dark hair pulled back in a practical style. Her expression was warm and friendly, completely at odds with the intimidating vessel she commanded. "Greetings, Coalition vessel Harmony's voice. I'm Captain Rodriguez of the United Human Space Vessel Steadfast. Sorry we're running a few minutes behind schedule. Had to detour around an asteroid field." Her smile seemed genuine. "Hope we didn't keep you waiting too long." Trell found his voice, though it came out higher than intended. "Captain Rodriguez, we were expecting a smaller vessel for the standard military assessment." Rodriguez glanced at something off-screen, then back at them with an apologetic shrug. "Yeah, about that. The Steadfast was the only ship available on short notice. Most of our fleet is deployed to the outer territories right now. I know she's a bit much for a meet and greet, but she's what we've got." Davin leaned close to Trell and whispered urgently, "This is their available ship. What does their main fleet look like?" The ambassador ignored him, focusing on Rodriguez. "Captain, your vessel is quite impressive. We had not anticipated something of this scale. I appreciate that, Ambassador. Tell you what, why don't you and your team come aboard? We can give you the full tour, let you see what the Steadfast can do. Standard diplomatic protocol, right? Break bread together, show you around, answer any questions you might have. Rodriguez's casual tone made it sound like she was inviting them over for dinner rather than aboard a warship that could probably destroy their entire vessel with a single weapon. Nissa looked to Trell for guidance. The ambassador's mind raced through the implications. The coalition had assumed humans would be like most species, with modest military capabilities focused on defense. This ship suggested something entirely different, but backing out now would be an insult, and they needed answers. "We accept your invitation, Captain Rodriguez," Trell said, straightening his posture to project confidence he didn't feel. "When should we dock?" "Whenever you're ready, Ambassador. We've got Hangar Bay 3 prepared for your shuttle. Fair warning, though, it's a bit of a walk from there to the main areas. The Steadfast is pretty big once you're inside her." The transmission ended. Trell turned to his team. "Davin, select 4 security personnel to accompany us. Kree, bring your scanning equipment. Captain Nissa, you'll join us as well." "Are we sure about this?" Davin asked. "That thing could swallow our ship whole." "That's exactly why we need to go," Trell replied. "The Coalition needs to understand what humans are capable of. Besides, they've been nothing but courteous so far." As their shuttle detached from the Harmony's voice and began its approach to the massive warship, Trell watched the Steadfast grow even larger. Rows of fighter craft lined the visible hangar bays. Point defense weapons tracked their movement with mechanical precision. Every surface spoke of function over form, built for one purpose. The hangar bay doors opened before them, revealing a space large enough to hold 3 Coalition frigates side by side. Their small shuttle looked like a toy as it glided inside. The doors closed behind them with a deep rumble that Trell felt in his bones. A human in military uniform waited as they disembarked. She smiled and raised her hand in greeting. "Welcome aboard the Steadfast, Ambassador Trell. I'm Lieutenant Hayes, weapons officer. Captain Rodriguez asked me to escort you to the bridge. We've got quite a tour planned." Trell looked up at the towering interior of the hangar, at the dozens of smaller craft arranged in precise rows, at the human crew members moving about their duties with casual efficiency. His feathers trembled slightly. "Lead the way, Lieutenant," he said. The real education was about to begin. The corridors of the Steadfast stretched wider than anything Trell had encountered on Coalition vessels. Lieutenant Hayes walked ahead of the diplomatic group, her boots clicking rhythmically against the metal deck plates. Emergency stations lined the walls every 50 meters, each containing fire suppression equipment, medical supplies, and atmospheric breathing gear. "Everything seems oversized," Kree observed, her scanning device humming quietly as she recorded data. "These passages could accommodate beings twice our height." Hayes glanced back with a knowing smile. "We design for worst-case scenarios. If the ship takes damage and sections lose gravity or atmosphere, crew members need room to move in full emergency gear. Plus, we sometimes transport heavy equipment through these corridors during repairs." Davin's eyes narrowed as they passed a group of human crew members. The humans nodded politely, some offering friendly smiles. One young man carried a tray with steaming cups, heading toward what looked like a crew recreation area. "Your people seem very relaxed for military personnel," the security chief commented. "Long deployments require good morale," Hayes explained. "The Steadfast can operate independently for 18 months without resupply. That's a long time to live on a ship, even one this size. We need our crews sharp and focused, which means keeping them healthy mentally and physically." 18 months. Trell's mind struggled with the concept. Coalition patrol vessels rarely stayed deployed longer than 3 weeks before rotating back to port. The idea of living aboard a warship for over a year seemed excessive, almost cruel. They entered a wide elevator that descended several decks. The doors opened onto what Hayes identified as the medical section. The space resembled a small hospital more than a ship's infirmary. Dr. Grace Patterson, a human with gray-streaked hair and confident movements, met them at the entrance. "Welcome to medical," she said, gesturing for them to follow. "We've got facilities for pretty much any emergency you can imagine and several you probably can't." The tour revealed trauma centers with surgical equipment that made Kree's antennae droop in dismay, regeneration pods designed to accelerate healing, storage banks containing artificial organs and synthetic blood, equipment for performing complex surgeries in zero gravity or during combat maneuvers. "We can handle everything from minor injuries to complete reconstructive procedures," Patterson explained, showing them a surgical suite. "Last year, we reattached a crew member's severed arm and restored full functionality within 6 weeks." Captain Nissa touched one of the surgical tables with something like horror. "Your people endure such terrible injuries." "Sometimes," Patterson admitted, "but humans heal quickly. Our evolutionary background on Earth means our bodies are good at recovering from trauma. We break bones, tear muscles, damage organs, and our systems kick into repair mode. It's not pleasant, but we survive things that would kill more fragile species." Trell felt a chill run through his small frame. His species could die from injuries that humans apparently considered routine medical cases. What kind of world produced beings so resilient? The engineering section proved equally overwhelming. Chief Engineer Roberts, a broad-shouldered human with permanently grease-stained hands, showed them the primary reactor core. The fusion reaction contained within the magnetic bottle produced more power than Trell had thought possible for a mobile platform. "She's a beast," Roberts said with obvious pride, patting a control console like it was a pet. "4 primary reactors plus 6 backup generators. We can lose 2 reactors completely and still maintain combat effectiveness. The Steadfast was built to take punishment and keep fighting." Kree's calculations ran continuously on her handheld device. "Chief Roberts, your ship could sustain 40% structural damage and remain operational." "Closer to 50% actually," Roberts corrected. "We've got redundancy built into everything. Power, life support, navigation, weapons, communications. If one system fails, 3 others can take over its functions. Nothing short of complete destruction will stop this ship from completing its mission." Coalition vessels became inoperable at 15% damage. The difference in engineering philosophy was staggering. They passed through crew quarters next. The accommodations seemed luxurious by military standards. Each crew member had private sleeping space, shared recreation areas, even a small greenhouse where plants from Earth grew under artificial sunlight. Humans exercised in a well-equipped gym. Others read or watched entertainment programs in a common lounge. "You treat your warriors very well," Trell observed. Hayes's expression softened. "They're not just warriors, Ambassador. They're engineers, medics, technicians, cooks, teachers. Some have families back home. Others were born on colony worlds. Each one volunteered to serve. The least we can do is give them a decent quality of life while they're protecting humanity's interests." The tour continued through multiple decks. They saw water purification systems that could process waste into drinkable water indefinitely, hydroponics bays growing fresh food, manufacturing facilities capable of producing spare parts for almost any ship system, storage areas packed with supplies and equipment. The Steadfast wasn't just a warship. It was a self-contained mobile colony. As they walked past an armory checkpoint, Trell caught sight of what lay beyond the security barrier. Racks of personal weapons lined the walls. Body armor hung on stands like silent sentinels. A squad of Marines practiced combat drills in an adjacent training room, their movements precise and coordinated. One Marine noticed them watching and offered a friendly wave. Trell waved back hesitantly. The human looked young, barely an adult, yet moved with deadly efficiency. The weapon secured to her hip could probably punch through the hull of a Coalition shuttle. Standard deployment loadout includes personal weapons, tactical armor, medical kits, and supplies for 2 weeks of independent operation, Hayes mentioned, noticing their interest. Our Marines train constantly. They're good at their job. Davin's voice carried an edge of concern. How often do they need to use these skills? Hayes met his gaze steadily. More often than we'd like. The galaxy isn't always a friendly place, Security Chief. Sometimes talking fails, and you need people who can protect others when words aren't enough. An announcement echoed through the corridor. All personnel, weapons demonstration will commence in 15 minutes. Gunnery crews to stations. Rodriguez's voice followed. Ambassador Trell, if you and your team would like to observe, please proceed to Observation Deck Alpha. I think you'll find it educational. Hayes gestured toward another elevator. This way. Captain Rodriguez thought you might appreciate seeing what the Steadfast can actually do. Nothing like a live demonstration to understand capabilities. Trell exchanged glances with his companions. Kree's antennae quivered with nervous energy. Nissa's expression showed deep concern. Davin's scales had taken on a pale coloration that indicated stress. "Lead on, Lieutenant," Trell said, his voice steady despite the anxiety building in his chest. Whatever they were about to witness, he suspected it would forever change the Coalition's understanding of humanity. The observation deck overlooked the weapons control center through reinforced transparent aluminum panels. Dozens of human operators sat at individual stations, their hands moving across controls with practiced efficiency. Display screens showed targeting data, system status readouts, and external views of space surrounding the Steadfast. Captain Rodriguez stood at the center of the command platform, her posture relaxed but alert. She smiled as the Coalition delegation entered. "Ambassador, thank you for joining us. We've prepared a basic demonstration of the Steadfast capabilities. Nothing too extreme, just enough to give you an accurate picture of what we can do." "Basic," Davin muttered under his breath. Hayes guided them to comfortable seating positioned for optimal viewing. Through the observation windows, Trell could see space stretching endlessly in all directions. The Harmony's voice floated at a safe distance, its small form dwarfed by the massive human warship. "Target drones deployed," an operator reported. "Range 50,000 kilometers. Multiple profiles including high-speed evasive, armored stationary, and swarm configuration." Rodriguez nodded. "Weapons free, let's start with kinetics." A low vibration ran through the deck. Trell watched as railgun batteries along the Steadfast hull swiveled into position. The weapons appeared deceptively simple, just long barrels with electromagnetic coils wrapped around them. Nothing about their appearance suggested the devastation they could unleash. "Firing," the weapons officer announced calmly. The railgun spoke without sound in the vacuum of space, but their effect was immediate and terrifying. Projectiles accelerated to 3% of light speed streaked toward their targets. The distant drones simply ceased to exist, transformed from solid matter into expanding clouds of vapor and debris. Kree's scanning device emitted a sharp warning tone. "Ambassador, those projectiles retained lethal velocity for over 1 million kilometers. A single shot could penetrate any Coalition vessel's hull and exit the other side without meaningful deceleration." "We prefer kinetics for precision work," Lieutenant Hayes explained, her tone suggesting this was routine. "No radiation signature, no electromagnetic pulse, just simple physics. Mass plus velocity equals a very bad day for whatever's on the receiving end." The Coalition team sat in stunned silence. Their military doctrine emphasized defensive shields and electronic countermeasures. Neither would provide any protection against lumps of metal traveling at relativistic speeds. Moving to missile systems, Rodriguez said. Launch sequence Alpha. Vertical launch tubes across the steadfast upper hull snapped open. Missiles erupted outward in a coordinated swarm, their rocket motors burning bright against the darkness. Trell counted at least 50 individual weapons before losing track. The missiles demonstrated frightening sophistication. Each weapon maneuvered independently, executing evasive patterns while converging on their designated targets. They communicated with each other, coordinating attacks to overwhelm defensive systems. Some accelerated to incredible speeds, others deployed decoys and countermeasures. The second wave of target drones didn't stand a chance. Multiple missiles struck each target simultaneously, approaching from different vectors to ensure complete destruction. The entire engagement lasted less than 1 minute. Those were training rounds with reduced payloads, Hayes mentioned casually. Combat versions carry significantly more punch. We've got armor-piercing penetrators, fragmentation warheads for soft targets, and electromagnetic pulse weapons for disabling electronics. Captain Nissa leaned forward. How many missiles does this ship carry? 2,000 in standard configuration, Rodriguez answered. We can adjust the loadout based on mission requirements. Sometimes we carry fewer missiles and more point defense ammunition. 2,000. The entire coalition fleet combined didn't possess that many weapons. Trell felt his understanding of military power shifting fundamentally. Everything he thought he knew about warfare suddenly seemed inadequate. Let's show them the defensive systems, Rodriguez suggested. Launch simulated attack pattern Delta. Hundreds of small drones deployed from the steadfast hangar bays, programmed to behave like incoming missiles. They accelerated toward the warship from multiple directions simultaneously, weaving and dodging like living things trying to reach their target. The steadfast's point defense network activated automatically. Laser batteries tracked the incoming threats with mechanical precision. Short-range interceptors launched from concealed tubes across the hull. Flak bursts filled space with expanding clouds of shrapnel. Trell watched in fascination as the defensive systems worked in perfect coordination. Lasers eliminated distant targets. Interceptors caught anything that slipped through the first layer. Flak destroyed anything that made it to close range. The humans hadn't created just one defensive system. They'd built multiple overlapping networks, each covering the gaps in the others. Intercept rate 99.7%, an operator reported. Good enough, Rodriguez said with satisfaction. That's within acceptable parameters. Davin's voice shook slightly. Your people consider 99.7% merely acceptable. Hayes shrugged. We train for perfection but plan for reality. Even the best systems have limitations. The key is building enough redundancy that a few failures don't compromise the overall defense. Coalition defensive systems achieved 60% intercept rates on good days. The difference was so vast it seemed impossible. Yet Trell had just watched it happen with his own eyes. One last demonstration, Rodriguez said. I've been authorized to show you our primary beam weapon. Just one shot, though. It drains power from the reactors significantly. The command deck grew quieter. Even the human crew seemed to pay extra attention. Trell noticed operators making adjustments to their stations, redirecting power from non-essential systems. Targeting asteroid designated Charlie 7, the weapons officer reported. Range 200 kilometers, charging primary capacitor banks. Through the observation windows, Trell could see energy building along the steadfast centerline. A massive focusing array aligned itself with geometric precision. Power readings on nearby displays climbed steadily higher. Firing. A lance of coherent particles erupted from the steadfast. The beam crossed the distance to its target almost instantaneously. The asteroid, a rocky body roughly 100 meters in diameter, developed a glowing hole straight through its center. Molten rock boiled away from the impact point as the beam's energy vaporized everything it touched. The beam cut off after 3 seconds. The asteroid continued tumbling through space, now with a perfectly circular tunnel punched completely through its mass. "That's what we save for capital ship engagements," Rodriguez explained. "The beam can maintain fire for up to 30 seconds if needed, though we rarely use it that long. Too much drain on the reactors, and it takes 10 minutes to recharge." Trell couldn't speak. His throat had gone dry. The casual way Rodriguez discussed weapons capable of destroying worlds was somehow more terrifying than the weapons themselves. Captain Nissa found her voice first. "How many ships like the Steadfast does humanity possess?" Rodriguez considered the question. "Battlecruiser class, about 40 in active service, plus carriers, dreadnoughts, and we've got 3 new Titan-class vessels under construction. Most of the fleet is deployed to the outer colonies right now, dealing with the Ravager situation." "Ravagers?" Trell asked. "The reason we built all this," Rodriguez said quietly. Before Rodriguez could elaborate on the mysterious Ravagers, alarms shrieked throughout the Steadfast. Red warning lights pulsed in the corridors visible through the observation deck windows. Human crew members moved instantly from relaxed efficiency to focused urgency. "Contact multiple vessels bearing 270 by -45, a sensor operator called out. 3 cruiser-class ships, unknown configuration. They're powering weapons." Rodriguez's friendly demeanor vanished, replaced by cold professionalism. "Battle stations. Identify those ships. Hayes, get our guests to a secure location." "Captain, they're targeting the Harmony's voice," another operator reported. "Weapons hot, firing solutions locked." Trell's heart's hammered in his chest. Their ship, their crew. The Harmony's voice carried a minimal defensive shield and no weapons. It couldn't withstand a military assault. Rodriguez didn't hesitate. "Helm, position Steadfast between the hostiles and the diplomatic vessel. Launch interceptors. All defensive systems online. Prepare to return fire." She turned to Trell. "Ambassador, we've got this. Your people will be safe." Hayes tried to guide the coalition delegation toward the exit, but Trell refused to move. "Those are my people out there." "And we're protecting them," Hayes assured him. "But you need to be in a reinforced section during combat operations." "No," Trell's voice carried surprising firmness. "If my crew is in danger, I witness what happens. I will not hide while others face threats meant for us." Rodriguez glanced at him, then nodded once. "Strap in and stay quiet. Hayes, secure them to the observation seats. If things get rough, the restraints will protect them." The Steadfast pivoted with surprising grace for something so massive. Its bulk interposed between the attacking vessels and the vulnerable coalition ship. Energy bolts from the unknown attackers splashed against the warship's shields, causing barely a flicker in the defensive systems. "Krell Raiders," the identification officer announced. 3 Devastator-class cruisers, likely operating independently. No transponder codes, probably looking for easy prey. "They picked the wrong day for it," Rodriguez said. "Target their engine sections. I want them disabled, not destroyed. We need prisoners for interrogation." The Steadfast railguns spoke their silent thunder. Trell watched through the observation windows as projectiles crossed space in microseconds. 2 Krell vessels shuddered as shots punched through their armor plating and destroyed their propulsion systems. The 3rd raider attempted to flee. "Launch Squadron Alpha," Rodriguez ordered. "Don't let that one get away." Hangar bay doors snapped open along the Steadfast flanks. Fighter craft erupted into space, their sleek forms accelerating impossibly fast. Human pilots maneuvered with reflexes that seemed superhuman, working in perfect coordination despite the high-speed chaos of combat. Cree watched her scanners with growing amazement. Their reaction times are incredible, neural interface with the fighter systems. "Nope," Hayes said. pure human reflexes and training. We're pretty good at things that require split-second decisions and spatial awareness. Millions of years dodging predators on Earth, I guess. The Krell raider twisted and turned, trying desperately to escape. The human fighters herded it like predators toying with prey, never quite letting it build enough speed to jump to faster-than-light travel. Energy weapons flashed as the fighters systematically disabled the raider's weapons and sensors. "Gift wrapped for you, Captain," the squadron leader's voice crackled over the communications system. "One slightly used Krell cruiser, ready for boarding." "Excellent work, Alpha Squadron. Return to base. Marine teams prepare for boarding action." Rodriguez's orders flowed smoothly, each command precise and efficient. Through the observation deck windows, Trell watched as boarding pods launched from the Steadfast. The cylindrical craft attached themselves to the disabled Krell vessel like parasites. Explosive charges blew access holes through the hull. Helmet camera feeds from the Marines appeared on several displays in the Weapons Control Center. The Coalition delegation watched as armored humans stormed through the breached sections. The Marines moved with frightening efficiency, working in small teams that covered each other's advances. Krell raiders fired back desperately. Energy bolts ricocheted off human armor. The Marines returned fire with disciplined precision, using non-lethal rounds that incapacitated rather than killed. When Krell fighters fell wounded, human medics immediately provided first aid even while the battle continued around them. "Deck 3 secured," a Marine officer reported. "Encountering heavy resistance on Deck 5, estimated 80 hostiles remaining." "Push through," Rodriguez authorized. "Rules of engagement remain in effect, minimum necessary force." The entire boarding action lasted 6 minutes. 6 minutes to overwhelm a ship with 80 defenders. The Marines fought with a combination of tactical brilliance and raw efficiency that left Trell breathless. They used stun grenades to disorient enemies, flashbangs to blind them, and restraint weapons to capture them alive. "Ship secured, Captain," came the final report. 3 Marines injured, none critical. 76 Krell prisoners, 12 wounded but stable. We've got control of their command deck and data systems." Rodriguez nodded with satisfaction. "Outstanding work. Get those prisoners to medical and treat their wounded. I want the Krell captain brought to interrogation within the hour." She turned to Trell. "Ambassador, your ship is undamaged. The Krell never got a shot past our shields. Your crew is safe." Trell tried to process what he just witnessed. 12 minutes. From first alarm to complete enemy capture in 12 minutes. The Steadfast hadn't just defended them. It had neutralized 3 hostile warships and captured the crews alive, all while protecting the Harmony's voice without a scratch. "Why did you take prisoners?" Captain Nissa asked. "Most species would have destroyed the raiders." Rodriguez's expression hardened slightly. "Because we follow rules of war, even when our enemies don't. Those Krell warriors will be fed, given medical care, and eventually return to their people. We're not barbarians, Captain. We have ethics and we maintain them even in combat." The Krell captain, a scarred veteran with cybernetic implants, was escorted to a holding area visible on one of the monitors. He looked terrified, probably expecting torture or execution. Instead, a human medical officer examined his injuries while another brought him water. "We're running interrogation now," an intelligence officer reported. "Initial information suggests these raiders were hired. Someone paid them to attack coalition vessels in this sector." "Who?" Rodriguez demanded. "They don't know. Anonymous contact, payment in advance, instructions to disrupt human coalition meetings." Trell felt cold realization wash over him. Someone wants to prevent our alliance. "Looks that way," Rodriguez agreed. She touched a control panel, bringing up a star chart. "Ambassador, we need to share something with you, about those Ravagers I mentioned earlier." The star chart showed a vast section of space beyond human territory. Red markers indicated threat zones. Long-range sensors detected movement here, Rodriguez explained, highlighting an area. Ravager scout fleet heading toward Coalition border space. Davin stood abruptly. We've never heard of these Ravagers. What are they? Rodriguez met his eyes. They're the reason humanity built ships like the Steadfast, and they're heading your way. The conference room aboard the Steadfast felt smaller than it actually was, despite being designed to accommodate large meetings. Trell sat across from Captain Rodriguez, while Kree and Davin flanked him on either side. Captain Nissa stood near the holographic display that dominated the center of the room. Rodriguez activated the projection, and a three-dimensional map of local space materialized between them. Red markers pulsed ominously along one edge of the display. 20 years ago, human colony ships reached the far edge of explored space. We established settlements on several worlds, built stations, started new lives. She paused, her jaw tightening. Then the Ravagers found us. The hologram shifted to show images of devastated worlds. Cities reduced to rubble, orbital stations torn apart, agricultural settlements burned to bare rock. Kree's antennae drooped as she processed the scale of destruction. They don't negotiate, don't communicate, don't take prisoners, Rodriguez continued. They arrive, they consume everything, and they move on. We lost 3 entire colonies before we understood what we were facing. 30,000 people, gone. Trell's voice came out barely above a whisper. What are they? We're still trying to figure that out. Biological ships, some kind of hive intelligence. They reproduce using resources from the worlds they destroy. Every planet they take makes them stronger. Rodriguez brought up tactical analysis. We've been fighting them for 2 decades. Built this fleet specifically to stop their advance. Lieutenant Hayes entered the room carrying data tablets. Long-range reconnaissance confirmed the reports, Captain. Ravager scout elements crossed into what we thought was empty space, but they're not heading toward human territory. Rodriguez highlighted a different section of the map. Coalition space glowed blue, peaceful, and unaware. The red markers moved steadily toward it. They're coming for you. 6 months, maybe less, before they reach your outer worlds. Davin's scales paled to almost white. Our military forces, we're not equipped for this kind of threat. I know, Rodriguez said gently. May I access Coalition military data? I need to assess your defensive capabilities. Trell sent an encrypted transmission to Coalition Command. Authorization came through within minutes. The Coalition's military forces appeared on the holographic display. 20 patrol vessels, 40 system defense platforms, minimal weaponry designed more for law enforcement than warfare. Hayes ran calculations on her tablet, her expression growing grimmer. Ambassador, with all due respect, a single Ravager battle group would overwhelm your entire fleet within hours. You don't have the weapons, armor, or tactics to fight something like this. Our society was built on trade and cooperation, Trell said, his voice hollow. We've had peace for 3 generations. War is something we study in history, not something we prepare for. Rodriguez leaned forward. That's why we're here, Ambassador. We can help if you'll let us. Kree's compound eyes focused intently on the human captain. What kind of help? A defensive alliance, Rodriguez explained. We share our military technology and tactical knowledge. We help train your people in combat operations. We station human battle groups in Coalition space to provide protection while you build up your own capabilities. Why would you do this? Nissa asked. You barely know us. Why risk your people for hours? Rodriguez was quiet for a moment, her gaze distant. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of painful memory. Before I commanded the Steadfast, I was a civilian engineer. Worked on Colony World Harmony Station. It was beautiful. Farms under biodomes, families building new lives, kids playing in the parks. She pulled up an image on the display. A thriving settlement with gleaming buildings and green spaces. The Ravagers came during a festival. Everyone was outside celebrating. We didn't even know what hit us until it was too late. The image shifted to show the aftermath. Nothing remained but scorched earth and twisted metal. I watched my family die while waiting for military ships that arrived 3 hours too late. 3 hours. Rodriguez's hands clenched into fists. We swore after that day, no one else would have to wait for help that comes too late. That's why we built ships like the Steadfast. Not for conquest or glory, but to protect people who can't protect themselves. Hayes added quietly, most of us have similar stories. Lost colonies, delayed responses, people we couldn't save. That's what drives us. The knowledge that somewhere out there, someone is in danger and we have the power to help them. Trell felt something shift in his understanding of humans. He'd looked at their weapons and assumed aggression. He'd seen their military might and presumed conquest. But now he understood. Humans built warships the way his people built hospitals. Not because they loved violence, but because they'd experienced too much of it and refused to let others suffer the same fate. The Coalition has no experience with warfare on this scale, he admitted. We would need significant assistance. We're offering it, Rodriguez assured him. Technology transfers, training programs, joint defense planning. We'll share what we know. Your people have incredible sensor technology and medical knowledge that could benefit us in return. This doesn't have to be charity. It can be true partnership. Davin spoke up. And the Steadfast, would ships like this be stationed in our space? 3 battle groups minimum, Hayes confirmed. That's 12 heavy warships including carriers and support vessels. Enough to hold off a major Ravager incursion while we mobilize additional forces. Trell connected to Coalition leadership through secure quantum link. The discussion was intense but brief. The threat assessment was clear. The Ravagers represented an existential danger that Coalition forces couldn't counter alone. Pride was a luxury they couldn't afford. The Coalition accepts your offer, Captain Rodriguez, Trell said formally. We request immediate defensive alliance with humanity. Rodriguez extended her hand across the table. Welcome to the Alliance, Ambassador. Trell took her hand, nodding the gentle grip despite obvious strength. I owe you an apology, Captain. When we first saw the Steadfast, I thought your people were warlike. I looked at your weapons and felt fear. And now, Rodriguez asked. Now I understand you didn't build these ships to break peace. You built them to protect it. Trell's feathers ruffled with emotion. We judged you by your weapons without understanding why you needed them. A lot of species make that mistake initially, Hayes said with a slight smile. They see the guns and miss the reason we carry them. Rodriguez pulled up fleet deployment schedules. We can have the first battle group here within 2 weeks. In the meantime, I'm authorized to keep the Steadfast in Coalition space. We'll begin setting up sensor networks and training programs immediately. The holographic display shifted to show combined Coalition human forces, blue and green markers working together, sharing technology and knowledge, united against a common threat. We have a lot of work ahead of us, Rodriguez said, but together we can do this. 6 months had passed since that first encounter aboard the Steadfast. Trell stood on the warship's bridge, no longer a nervous visitor but an official Coalition liaison officer. The bridge crew had grown accustomed to his presence, often seeking his input on Coalition systems and protocols. The transformation of Coalition space had been remarkable. Human battle groups now patrolled previously vulnerable sectors. Coalition vessels had been upgraded with hybrid weapon systems, combining human firepower with Coalition sensor precision. Joint training exercises ran daily across a dozen worlds. Ambassador, incoming transmission from Coalition Command, a communications officer announced. Priority urgent. Trell moved to a dedicated console. The face of High Coordinator Senna appeared on the screen, her avian features tight with stress. Trell, the Ravagers have arrived. Outer colonies detected their fleet an hour ago. 3 battle groups heading for the agricultural worlds in the Pelos system. "How long until they reach Pelos?" Trell asked, keeping his voice steady. 8 hours at their current speed. Our evacuation ships can maybe get half the population out in time. Captain Rodriguez appeared beside Trell. She'd been listening to the conversation. "High Coordinator, this is Captain Rodriguez. We've been preparing for this. Is the joint fleet assembled?" "Standing by at Rally Point Sigma," Senna confirmed. 12 coalition vessels and 6 human warships. But Captain, the Ravagers have never faced organized resistance before. We don't know if our combined forces will be enough. "Then let's show them what happens when someone fights back," Rodriguez said. "Helm, set course for Rally Point Sigma maximum speed. All hands to battle stations." The Steadfast's massive engines flared to life, and the warship accelerated through space. Other human vessels moved into formation around them. Coalition ships joined the formation, their upgraded systems glowing with ready power. Lieutenant Hayes approached with tactical displays. Enemy composition analysis shows approximately 40 Ravager vessels, mix of bioships ranging from frigate to battleship equivalents. They're not expecting organized resistance. "Good," Rodriguez said. "Let's keep the element of surprise as long as possible. Trell, do your people have the evacuation coordinated?" "Transport ships are already loading civilians," Trell confirmed. "Medical stations are preparing to receive wounded. Everyone knows their role." The combined fleet arrived at Pelos system 3 hours before the Ravagers. Coalition colony worlds hung in space, their populations watching the skies with hope and fear. Rodriguez established command coordination with Coalition Admiral Brevik aboard the carrier Unity's Dream. "Admiral, recommend we position the fleet between the Ravagers and the colony worlds," Rodriguez suggested. "Let them come to us. We'll use the planetary gravity wells to limit their maneuverability." "Agreed, Captain," Brevik responded. The avian admiral had spent months training alongside human officers. "Coalition vessels will focus on sensor jamming and targeting support. Your ships deliver the heavy firepower." The Ravager fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel like a plague. Their ships were organic nightmares, all writhing tentacles and chitinous armor. They moved with predatory grace, already targeting the colony worlds for consumption. Then they saw the waiting fleet. "They're hesitating," Cree observed from her sensor station. "This isn't normal behavior for them. They've never encountered organized defense before." "Let's give them something to really think about," Rodriguez said. "All ships, weapons free, target their command vessels first." The combined fleet opened fire. Human railguns sent projectiles screaming across space. Coalition energy weapons, amplified by human power cores, lanced through Ravager bioarmor. Missiles swarmed toward their targets with deadly precision. The Ravagers reacted with surprise, then fury. They had evolved to overwhelm unprepared prey, not face coordinated military resistance. Their return fire splashed against combined shields, unable to penetrate the overlapping defensive networks. "They're trying to split our formation," Hayes warned. "Standard Predator tactic, isolate and destroy." "Not today," Rodriguez replied. "All vessels maintain formation integrity, cover each other's flanks, show them what teamwork looks like." The battle raged for hours. Ravager ships tried every tactic in their arsenal, but the combined fleet held firm. When human vessels took damage, coalition ships moved to cover them. When coalition shields weakened, human warships provided protective fire. They fought as one organism, each compensating for the other's weaknesses. The Steadfast's weapons blazed continuously. Railguns eliminated smaller Ravager vessels, while the primary beam weapon carved through their larger ships. Point defense systems intercepted bioprojectiles before they could reach friendly vessels. Trell watched coalition fighters flying alongside human interceptors, working in mixed squadrons. The pilots communicated seamlessly despite language differences, united by common training and purpose. A coalition pilot's ship took damage, and two human fighters immediately moved to escort the wounded craft back to safety. Enemy forces breaking off, the tactical officer reported. They're attempting to retreat. Rodriguez's expression remained hard. Don't let them escape. If even one gets away, they'll report our capabilities and adapt. Pursuit squadrons take them down. The combined fleet pressed the advantage. Ravager vessels that had terrorized human space for 20 years now fled in disarray. They'd encountered something they'd never faced before: organized, determined resistance backed by overwhelming firepower and tactical superiority. The last Ravager ship fell silent 3 hours after the battle began. Not a single enemy vessel escaped. The combined fleet had achieved complete victory with minimal casualties. Cheers erupted across the communications network. Coalition crews celebrated alongside their human counterparts. On the colony worlds below, millions of people who had faced certain death now had a future. Rodriguez turned to Trell. "Ambassador, would you like to address the fleet?" Trell nodded, activating the fleet-wide channel. "Coalition and human forces, this is Ambassador Trell. Today you prove that cooperation defeats aggression. Unity overcomes division. Together, we are stronger than any threat we face alone." He paused, looking at the humans who had risked everything to protect people they'd barely known 6 months ago. "When I first saw the Steadfast, I saw a warship and feared what it represented. Today, I see it clearly. These vessels aren't instruments of war. They're shields protecting peace. They're the promise that no one stands alone against the darkness." Captain Rodriguez placed a hand on his shoulder. "Well said, Ambassador. Helm, set course for Pelo's orbit. I think those colonists would like to thank their defenders in person." As the Steadfast moved toward the planet, Trell reflected on how much had changed. The Coalition had learned that strength wasn't about aggression, but about having the power to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. Humans had found allies who valued their sacrifice rather than fearing their capabilities. Through the viewport, he watched Coalition and human vessels flying side by side. Different species, different backgrounds, united by common values and mutual respect. "Captain," he said quietly, "thank you for showing us what those weapons truly mean." Rodriguez smiled. "We build them big and scary so hopefully we never have to use them. But when peaceful people face existential threats, having friends with big guns makes all the difference." The fleet moved into orbit, ready to help rebuild, ready to defend, ready to face whatever came next.